Cool. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. First of all, thanks for being here this evening. Welcome to my session about improving team collaboration using database projects and Azure DevOps. My name is Olivier Van Steenlandt. I'm a BI team lead working for Legio IT Services. Legio IT Services is a holding over multiple fast-growing retail companies located in Belgium. At Legio, I'm mainly known as the person who makes the BI development planning and the person who optimizes the BI development and deployment flows. In my spare time, I'm a core member for DataMinds as well. Just that you know, in case you have any questions about the topics that I'm touching today, please feel free to reach out. You can find my contact details at the slide in front of you, so you can contact me via my personal blog, via email, via Twitter, via LinkedIn if you would like to. Just reach out. I'm more than eager to assist where possible. Then, today, I'm going to take you on a journey that I've been experiencing in the past couple of years. So first of all, I will set the scene and explain where I was, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago. Then, how we were able to transition our development team to work in a more flexible way. Then, the main part of this session will go about how to get started with database projects and Azure DevOps. So it really will be a one-on-one session today. Near the end of the presentation, I will already give you some pointers what you can do afterwards as well. To finalize this presentation, I will give you an overview of benefits and challenges. Of course, when you're working with database projects and Azure DevOps. A couple of years ago, I was working in a rather small development team, let's say consisting of 3 to 5 developers. Back then, we were having 2 environments at our disposal, a development environment and a production environment. As a matter of process, we were keeping track of all changes manually. So every object we touched, every logic we changed, every configuration or parameter we added or changed was kept track of manually. Where? Well, on a development ticket, in a Word file, in an Excel file. We tried email as well. Let's say that wasn't the best solution. It can get quite messy fast. And then our main tool for development was SQL Server Management Studio, which of course is a very convenient way of working, but we were having a couple of challenges that we really would like to overcome. One of these challenges, for example, was moving big projects to production. What typically happened when we received the go to move something to production? Well, we first needed to find out, well, which development tickets were involved, if we have documented what was changed and where it was changed. So during preparation, we first need to find out which tickets, then we need to create our upgrade scripts, migration scripts, update scripts, and so on. So preparation already took us quite a long time, half an hour, maybe 4 hours, maybe a day, maybe more. And then after preparation, we started deployment. During deployment, we typically ran into a couple of issues where we didn't put all objects in the right order for deployment and so on. So deployment already was quite a hassle. Then we fired up test launches. And as soon as test launches were done, we could start bug fixing straight away. Why? Well, we still were missing objects, we were missing configuration, parameters, and so on. So preparing and deploying really was a hassle. In an ideal situation, what you actually would like to do is, well, being able to prepare and deploy, let's say, in a matter of minutes. And after deployment, you want to fire up your test launches, and as soon as these are done, you want to go out with your team and start celebrating your victory of moving that 1 or 2 or 3 projects to production. In my case, it would definitely be with a decent glass of Belgian beer. But unfortunately, at that point in time, we weren't able to. A second use case that I would like to share is priority changes. I have been in this situation myself, but just to make sure it is very clear, I will give you a fictive example. Let's say we are a beer manufacturing company, but a rather small one. So we have only 1 production line. And at that production line, we're currently brewing the Leffe Triple bottled. And We're currently making changes to the production line, and management runs into the office, explaining to us, well, customer demand is rising for draft beer, so we need to get it right now. At that point in time, the development team needed to disappoint management since they were already making changes and they really had no way to go back to the start. So they first need to finalize the changes before they could get the changes in for a draft beer, which of course really is a shame since they weren't able to keep up with customer demand. A third example. A third example is unwanted changes in production. A couple of years ago, I was working for a company in that small development team, and we were allowed, when we came into the office in the morning, to take a look at quick wins. Let's say a quick win is development of, let's say, a maximum of 30 minutes. So we were allowed to execute development in the morning, then executing validations ourselves around noon, and in the afternoon or evening, we were already deploying these changes to production. What typically happened, not to say almost all the time, was that we were moving way too much to production. Instead of, well, making the changes for the Leffe triple bottled, we were already pushing our brand new beer into production, which didn't pass validation yet. It could have been such a great product, but since we released way too fast and more or less without us knowing, we were only pushing a mediocre product, which could have been a lot better. So, as you can see, there really is room for improvement. A last example is, well, a couple of years ago, in the same development team, we were required to use a certain, let's say, bug fixing strategy, which we called production first, meaning to minimize day-to-day business impact, we were deploying changes or we were creating bug fixes first on the production environment. I know it isn't a good way to do so, but yeah, we were required to just to make sure that we minimize day-to-day business impact. And as soon as the bug fix was done in the production environment, we were copying the code back to the development environment. Or at least we should have. So, of course, during next deployments, we were, well, deploying new changes to production, but we were overwriting our bug fixes as well, which of course isn't very useful for business. So we were actually deploying or bringing empty bottles of beer to our production environment without the liquid gold inside, without our already built knowledge inside, which of course is a shame. If we need to summarize what goes wrong or what went wrong back then, well, first of all, as a development team, we were failing because of human mistake. Why? Well, we didn't document properly, we didn't script out everything properly for our deployments, we didn't copy the code back for the bug fixes to the development environment, and so on. Then something I didn't mention during the use cases, but we were failing on team communication as well. Why? Well, even within our own team of 3 to 5 developers, if we were properly communicating, everyone could have been aware that certain bug fixes were made into production and at least execute a quick check if they were available on the development environment as well, which of course didn't happen back then. And then we're here for today, of course, code management. If there was a proper code management system in place, then it could have overcome, let's say 80%, maybe 90%, not to say all of these issues. So right now, it really is time to take a look at the future. So what are we going to do? Well, as a matter of fact, I would advise to get a third environment in place, the acceptance environment. Where are we going to use this environment for? Well, first of all, to test our deployments. That's the first step. Then I would advise to use this environment as well to get business involved, to make sure that they can do validation on their side as well before any development moves to production. This already can help to avoid production issues. It wouldn't solve everything, but can already help for a bit. Then, as a matter of process, we are going to introduce automatic change tracking. Why automatic? Well, we will require a certain set of tools which are going to help us. First of all, we are going to introduce Git, which will be our file-based comparison system. Then we are going to introduce Azure DevOps, where we will store our code. Our main tool for development will be Visual Studio. So this will be a quite big shift from Management Studio to Visual Studio. If you want to, you can use Azure Data Studio as well to execute development, but for today and during this session, I will be only showing you how to execute development in Visual Studio. And then, of course, what I already mentioned for Management Studio, you can still use Management Studio, but then it would be rather from a validation point of view. Now, let's take a look at database projects. So, what is a database project? Well, a database project allows us to execute more project-oriented database development. If we take a look at the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a screenshot of Management Studio with the familiar folder structure, tables, views, store procedures, functions, and so on. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see an example database project. As you can see, the folder structure is more or less the same. The key takeaway right here is the folder structure in your database project is your own responsibility. You can do whatever you want, how you want it. You can go wild, you can go crazy, but just make sure it is clear for your development team and for yourself. What is important to mention about database projects as well? Well, first of all, don't ever use database names in scripts. Never. I will explain why. A couple of years ago, I was working for a company, and in that company, they were a really big fan of having the environment name in the database name, meaning database name underscore development, underscore acceptance, underscore PRD or production, or you know what, just to make it a bit fun, just leave the production suffix behind. So if you're using hard-coded database names, you wouldn't be able to deploy between different environments very easily. Just know, if you require to mention an external object from a different database in your database project, you can make use of SQL command variables. You don't need to remind the term for today, just know there is a way. Then there is something to tell about indexes as well. You can do two different things. One is, well, you can include your indexes in your database project, or you don't. If you do, just know that deployment time will increase. Well, why? Fairly easy, actually. If you're, for example, changing the data type of a certain column, well, then during deployment, it will first drop all indexes on that certain object. It will recreate the table, and then it will recreate all indexes on that table. So just something to consider. Then last thing I want to mention about database projects are publishing profiles. So what is a publishing profile? Well, it actually is an XML file where you can store deployment properties into. What kind of properties? Well, do you always want to deploy database properties? What do you want to do when there might be data loss? Might be an important one. Then, to finalize, what do you want to do when there are indexes available on your target database which aren't available in your database project? This might become very interesting and very important when you decide to not include your indexes in your database project. Now, Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps mainly consists of 5 default services. For today, I will be only talking about Azure DevOps Repos, where we will store our code base. Just know, if you ever want to find out, or if you ever want to automate your database deployments, it might be worth it to take a look at Azure DevOps pipelines. And if you don't have a development ticketing system yet, it might be an idea to take a look at Azure DevOps boards as well. Now, if we take a look at Azure DevOps repos and for today the Git way of working, then it is important to know that Git is a distributed version control system, meaning every developer will work on a local copy of the code. That is really important to understand, actually. Then, when working with Git, you will hear a lot about branching as well. So what is branching? Well, actually branching is nothing more or nothing less than creating a copy of the existing code. That is a branch, actually. Then, when working with Git, the most important commands will be pull to get all changes from the remote to your local machine, then push, or actually commit and push to get your changes from your local machine to the remote to make sure that your colleagues can continue working on your project when you're absent, for example. And then merging. Merging is the process where you're going to combine two branches back to one. I will be showing this one in the demo later on as well. Now, today, I'm going to show you how to work with a concept which is called branching per feature or feature branching or trunk-based development. Well, there are a lot of names for the same process, basically. So a bit later on, we're going to create a brand new repository in Azure DevOps. And what you will see is by default, the repository will get a main branch or often called master branch as well. And this branch should always contain your production version of the code. No exceptions made here. Then, since we're just starting up, we are going to create a new branch based on the main branch, which we will call our development branch. And then for every single project or feature that we would like to develop, we are going to create a separate branch based on the main or master branch. That is really important to solve our flexibility issue that we are currently having. So we're going to execute development on our featured branch. As soon as development is done, we're going to commit and push our changes away to Azure DevOps. And then it is time to merge our feature branch to the development branch. So we're going to introduce our new code into the development branch, deploy it to the development environment, and then we can start validation of our code. And at that point, if you need to make a bug fix on your new developed code, it is important to execute the bug fix on your feature branch and then remerge it to the development branch and redeploy it. That is really important. And then, of course, in the end, if we passed validation and we're allowed to move it to the main branch, well, then we're just going to merge it to the main branch. I will show you two different ways of merging today, but more on that later on during the demo as well. Now, what are the biggest challenges with source control? First of all, merge conflicts, especially when you're as patient as I am, and you probably are working with external tools to handle all your Git commands. Then it might be important always, if you're adding a file in your database project or you're renaming a file and so on, to hit the Save All button in Visual Studio. Otherwise, you will run into merge conflicts sooner than later. Then it will need to become a habit to pull in all changes from the branch where you're merging to. So you pull in all changes before you execute a merge. Really important, otherwise it will lead to merge conflicts. Then there is something to tell about branch maintenance as well. So if you say, well, I want to get started and I'm going to work with manual merges, so you're going to merge yourself, then just know that for every single feature branch that you're going to create, you will need to remove it in the end as well. To solve this, you can, for example, use pull requests. I will show you in the end how it works and what it actually does. And then, to be fair, the biggest challenge that you will have with source control is people. You might be wondering why everyone needs to be working in the same way or source control won't work. It really is as easy as that. So people will be your biggest challenge. Cool. I've been talking a lot theoretically, so it is time to get in a more practical example. So what did I do? I've opened up Visual Studio. I'm just going to see. Nope. This is a bit annoying. Oh well, we'll get there. Cool. I've opened up Visual Studio and I've created a brand new solution in Visual Studio, which is called, and you can't see it. There we go. Once more, which is called Data Mines for today. In that solution, I've created a brand new project, AdventureWorks LT, which we'll be using later on. But first of all, as a first step in this demo, I want to show you how to create a brand new project in your empty solution. To do so, I'm going to navigate to the left-hand side of my screen, where I've already opened my SQL Server Object Explorer, and I've connected to, I have been connecting to my local instance of SQL Server 2019. Right here, what I'm going to do, well, I will first execute a full database import for the AdventureWorks data warehouse. And then in a second step, I will be using AdventureWorks LT to show you an alternative way, but more on that later on. So let's get started. What am I going to do? Well, I'm just going to right-click on the database and say create new project. There we go. Now the import database wizard has launched. So what do we need to do? First of all, we need to give it a proper name. In my case for today, AdventureWorks data warehouse. And then I need to tell, well, you need to store it in this location. So I'm just going to browse, go to the right folder right here and say select folder. And there we go. Cool. This is step one. Now, something I really want to point out. For today, we won't be bothering too much about the import settings, but I want to point out this feature right here, the folder structure. If you really enjoy working with the folder structure as in Management Studio, then I would advise to use the object type folder structure right here. So let's try. So object type, and then we just say start. What Visual Studio is doing right now, it's first going to create a brand new project in my DataMine solution, and then it's going to import all existing database objects from my existing database into my database project. While Visual Studio is doing all the hard work, I'm going to show you something else. Right there. Before you can get started with database projects, you need to have a certain extension installed as well, or a certain feature actually. So we're going to Tools, Get Tools and Features. And at this point in time, the Visual Studio installer is going to launch. There we go. And now we need to play the waiting game. As soon as the Visual Studio installer is preloaded, there we go, we can navigate to the right-hand side and we can take a look at data storage and processing. And right here, it is important to see that SQL Server Data Tools is installed. This is really important. If you can't find it right there, just scroll down and take a look at data storage and processing right here. Cool. That being said, in the meanwhile, Visual Studio should have been completing the database import. And there we go. So if we take a quick look, well, finished importing database, which is cool. I created a log file as well. To be fair, I never bothered to take a look at it. But if you want to, there is one. Now we are just going to say finish. So our database project has been completely imported. If we want to do a quick validation, well, I'm just going to extend the view here. I'm going to take a look at my views folder. Might be the most useful, not too much objects in there. And if we quickly compare, we have 5 views on our target server and we have 5 in our database project as well. So it does seem to add up as well, which is very useful, of course. There we go. This is one way to create a database project. Now I will be showing you an alternative setup as well, something I've been using a couple of times and for specific reasons. So to explain, we're going to extend it a bit. There we go. To explain, for this example, we're going to use the AdventureWorks LT database. Why? Well, in the past, I've been in a situation where the database wasn't in my ownership. Let's say the OLTP system is owned by a third-party vendor, and we're only allowed to maintain certain objects on the database. So we can't do a full import of the database, since that would be wouldn't be very useful. So we only are going to import what we need. So what are we going to do for today? Well, I'm going to show you how to do it with the view product category right here. To do so, we're going to navigate to our AdventureWorks LT project on the right-hand side. I'm going to right-click, and right now I really need to create my folder structure myself. So views, and then the only thing I'm going to do is dragging and dropping my view into the views folder. And there we go. It can be as easy as this. Although, just know this wasn't working in Visual Studio 2022 a couple of weeks ago for some reason. But besides that, let's take a look at the view. And as you can see, for some reason, we're getting quite a lot of errors. Well, unresolved reference to schema, unresolved reference to object, unresolved reference to object. Oh, well, I really think you get the point. So what is happening? Since we aren't getting all objects or all reference in our database project, we will need to find a way to overcome these errors. To do so, actually fairly easy, but it will be a multi-step process. So first of all, we're going to navigate to our product category SQL file. I'm going to right-click and say properties. And right here, we're going to take a look at the build action. Now, for persons who know what it is, just give me one moment. So by default, when you're creating a SQL file in database project, it will always be assigned to the build action, meaning this file will go into the build and deployment process by default, always. Now, since we really do have issues with our view, we need to find a way to ignore these. To do so, we are going to use, as a first step, we're going to say, well, build action none, which will be telling the build process and deployment process, well, you can just ignore this file completely. Of course, we still need to find a way to deploy it in the end as well. So we're just going to choose build action none and save. Go. And as you can see at the bottom, no issues found. So one type of issue solved. Now, of course, since we still want to include it in our deployment, and we want to make sure that our changes that we're going to make are included in the deployment in the end, we will need to do something additional. To do so, I'm going to introduce you to a new file, actually. So I'm going to right-click on my database project, go to Add New Item. And right here, I'm just going to search for post-deployment script. So I'm going to introduce you to a post-deployment script. And I'm quickly going to zoom out. There we go. So what is a post-deployment script? Well, it's already properly documented. So what it says is, well, this file contains SQL statements that will be appended to the build script. For now, keep the appended word right here into mind. This is really important to understand. Then it just tells us, well, if you want to include a file, use this syntax. So let's try. We're going to say r double point. Oh, great. Views, view, product category.SQL. And there we go. Now we're done. Cool. Almost. I asked you to keep the appended word in mind. So let's take a look at the view product category. Right here. Why is the appended word so important? Well, because of this. What a post-deployment script is doing, it will literally copy the SQL file that you're referring to and paste it at the end of the build script or deployment script. So what this is going to do is, well, it will try to create this view over and over and over again. So first deployment will go fine, but from second deployment onwards, it will start to fail. So we need to assist Visual Studio in some kind of way. To do so, well, we can do two different things. Say create or alter view, or what you can do as well is say, well, drop view, it exists. And if you're using this way, it is really important to let it go as well. Otherwise, it won't work. And there we go. Now we will be able to deploy all our changes from the product category view to our target database as well. Now, let's say we have now set up our full database project and we want to get it to Azure DevOps. To do so, well, we are going to Azure DevOps right here. Quickly going to zoom in just a bit. There we go. What did I do? I signed in into Azure DevOps. I've created an organization, and in that organization, I've created a brand new project, DataMines. If we're going to this project, there we go. I'm just going to navigate to Repos. And right here, I'm going to create a brand new repo. To do so, well, I'm just going to say new repository. Repository type Git is what I'm going to show you today. I'm just going to call it DataMines. And for today, I won't be bothering to include a README. I will just hit create. And there we go. We have created our remote repository. So now the only thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy the URL to my repository, and I'm going back to Visual Studio. If you have been watching carefully around my screen, it might be that you already saw that Visual Studio was already pointing us out, well, it might be a good idea to add it to source control. So let's do that. Git. And right here, so what did I do? I just went to existing remote since we're not connecting to GitHub. Then Visual Studio identified where my project was stored, which I want to add to source control, of course. And then I just copied I pasted the URL from DevOps into the remote URL. And now we just need to say create and push. Yes, I want to save. At this point in time, Git is, well, first of all, committing all changes made to my disk and to my local repository, since it will be creating a local repository first. And then it's going to connect to Azure DevOps, and it's going to push all the changes to the remote as well. So I can tell you everything was successful. If we take a look at the right bottom corner, I can say we're connected to the DataMines repository, and we're currently looking at the master branch. If we now want to validate this in Azure DevOps, we can easily do so. So there we go, Azure DevOps. I'm just going to hit refresh. And there we go. So we can see our initial version saved in Azure DevOps just now. Cool. So we have our first version of our database project in Azure DevOps, and this is the point where everyone can benefit from the work that you have been doing. Now, as a second step, since I'm going to show you how to execute development using feature branching, I will be first creating my development branch, just to make it myself a bit easier in the end. So I'm going to click on the master and say new branch. Well, development based on master, I'm just going to say create. And this is everything I'm going to do in Azure DevOps for now. Now I'm going back to Visual Studio. There we go. And right here, I now want to start my development. So I'm quickly going to close these ones. There we go. I'm going to navigate to the right bottom corner to master. And I'm going to say new branch. Right here, I first need to determine my branch name. In my case, what I really like to do is say, well, it's a feature / my ticket number. If I would be working on a bug fix, I would be starting with, well, bug fix. This can become really helpful if you're working with a lot of branches. So for today, just feature, data warehouse ticket 1. And then this one is important based on, well, local master. If you use local master, then it is important to first pull in all changes from remote for the master branch before you create a new branch. Just to be safe, choose remote origin master. Then you know that you're certainly working on the most recent version of the production code. And then just hit create. And as we can see right now in the bottom right corner, we're currently connected to our feature data warehouse 1 branch. So it is time to execute development. For today, I'm going to execute the hardest development in years, and you can already see it. I will be executing, or will be adding product category description 8. This really took a long time, but it's done right now. So product category description 8, and you might be taking a look at the right bottom corner again. And as you can see, Visual Studio or Git has identified that one change was made. So if we click on the pencil on the number 1, the Git changes pane is opening up. As we can see, it says, well, I identified the change on view product category.sql. What do you want to do with it? Well, I want to stage the change to make sure I can make the commit and push it to the remote. To do so, I first staged it, and now it is time to enter a meaningful message. And please make sure that these messages explain why you did something. So now I will say data warehouse ticket 1. Well, I added a column for demo purposes. And why? Well, to show how easy it can be to work with database projects and Azure DevOps. And then we just say, well, commit staged and push. Right now, Git is first committing the change locally on the local repository, and then it's pushing your change to the remote. So everything went successfully, and now we can take a look at Azure DevOps. So let's take a look. Refresh. Lost change 4 minutes ago. I might be missing something. Right. Something to point out as well. In the beginning, when I started to work with Azure DevOps, I ran into this issue a couple of times. I was just taking a look at the wrong branch. It really is silly, but it happened a couple of times. So if I switch to my feature branch, I will see that my last change was just now. Cool. We have execute development. Now we want to get it to the development environment. So to do so, we're going back to Visual Studio for now, and we're going to switch to development branch to merge our change from our feature branch to development branch. So we're going to the right bottom corner to remote. Hey, but wait, I can see my feature branch at the remote. I can see the master branch, but I'm very sure there was a development branch as well. So what to do? Well, something I didn't mention yet. In order to get branch changes in, so new branches created by others, remove branches, and so on, you will need to execute a command which is called a fetch command. To do so, you can just go to the bottom corner again, click right here and say fetch. Or what you also can do, just go to the Git changes pane and just say fetch. It basically does the same. And as soon as this is done, we can go back to the right bottom corner. There we go. Go to remote and development. And there we go. So as you can see, my change isn't included yet. So it is time to include the change. To do so, well, back to the right bottom corner. This really is my favorite corner, by the way. Go to the development branch, right click on my feature branch and say merge into current branch. Well, Visual Studio. Are you sure? Yes, please. And as you can see, my change appeared immediately. And Visual Studio also identified one additional change. Where, well, if we take a look, one outgoing change. This actually is the commit that we need to push to the remote to let the remote know that we have created a merge or that we have executed the merge. So we just push it to the remote. There we go. And now the remote repository is in sync as well. So we are ready to execute our deployment to the development environment. To do so, well, I'm going to the Solution Explorer. I'm going to right-click on my database project, and I'm going to publish. As a first step in the build or in the publishing process, it's first going to execute the build process. During the build process, there are a couple of things that are validated and checked to be sure that there were no syntax errors, that the references are properly set, and so on. During the build process, it is creating 3 default files. The most important one is the deckpack file. Right. If you're wondering what is included in a deckpack file, well, just know, if you really want to find out, just remove the .deckpack extension and change it to .zip. Extract it, and you can take a look inside. Might be interesting to execute once. Then, as a next step, as soon as the build has been successfully done, you need to connect to your target server. So I'm going to connect to my AdventureWorks LT database. And then, before I'm going to hit publish, I'm going to show you something in the advanced section as well. As you can remind, during the presentation, I was showing you certain set of deployment properties. So, first one, what do you want to do with, do you want to deploy your database properties? In my case, since in this use case, the AdventureWorks LT database is a third-party vendor database, I don't want to include my database properties. So we're just going to unmark this one. And then what do you want to do if there might be data loss? To be fair, having this saved my life a couple of times. It really did. Just know, if you, for some reason, ever want to remove columns, you will need to unmark this one. Otherwise, deployment will fail. Then I will be going to the drop section as well. Right here are some important ones as well. And mainly, of course, since I was discussing about indexes during the presentation as well, this one, if you don't include your indexes in your database project, then it will be really important to unmark this one as well. So for now, I'm just going to unmark them all. I'm going to hit OK. Before I hit the publish button, this also is the time where you can create a publishing profile. To do so, well, just say save profile as, then give it, well, let's say a proper name. In my case, it will be just database name _dev or project name _dev, and save. Before I'm going to deploy, I want to show you what is included in which format. So I've opened up the publishing profile. And as you can see, what is included? Well, our database name, the connection string, what to do if there might be data loss, what to do with indexes right here, and so on. Just that you know. What is very useful about the publishing profile? Well, if I just double click on the file, the build process will be launched and the publish database window will be opened up and preloaded with the configuration that we made previously. And now we can just hit the publish button. There we go. And now we once more need to play the waiting game. And there we go. So what has it been doing? Well, it first created the publish preview, then it has created database scripts, then it executed the publish script on the target server, and the publish went successfully, and all that in a matter of 7 seconds. In the past, I was losing hours, sometimes days, to get prepared and deployed. Now I did it, well, let's say in a couple of minutes, since, well, we merged our feature branch to development environment, and then we deploy to our environment. So I am gaining precious time. This really was a game changer for me. Now, there are a couple more things I want to show you. First of all, now that we have made a first change to that certain SQL file, well, what does Git allow us to? Well, if we right-click on the file, go to Git, and go to View History, we can see, well, this person made changes at this point in time, and this was the reason. And to be fair, I'm using this overview a lot. I'm doing a lot of validation work, And this really helps me just to understand why something has been changed, by whom, when, and additionally, if I want to see what has been changed, well, I can easily select both of the commits, right click, and say compare. And this is showing me exactly what has been changed. So right here, you can immediately tell, well, product category description 8 has been added. This really is a cool feature. There we go. That's that. Now, one more thing I would like to show you. If I'm going to Azure DevOps, so let's say we have executed development. Development was properly validated, and we are allowed to push it to production. Now, what we did to get our change to the development environment was a manual merge. Now I'm going to show you how to work with pull requests. So what is a pull request? So I'm just going to Repos pull requests on the left-hand side. And I'm going to say new pull request. Then it is important to say, well, I want to start from my feature branch to master. Then it provides the title, description. And then I'm going to say, well, this is the person who is the lucky one to revise these changes. So what are pull requests and what do they do? Well, by using pull requests, you're actually introducing peer reviewing. It really is as easy as that. And to be fair, when using pull requests, your development quality will rise immediately. So I added the reviewer, and I'm just going to say, well, create. Now it's first validating if there might be any merge conflicts, and luckily for now, there aren't any. And then, well, I need to validate my own changes for now, since I'm a one-man team, but normally it should be somebody else, of course. I know companies who, for example, are assigning even 2 revisers to one pull request, just to make sure that everything gets validated properly or revised properly. Now, if I navigate to files, I can see, well, a change was made on the view product category.sql file. And if I scroll, well, right here, product category description 8 was added. Seems to be quite okay. Well, I will approve. And I will say complete. And if I'm right, I received a remark a bit earlier this week, I guess, by the merge types. So by default, it will just use merge no fast forward, which you can use. Just know if you're continuously making changes on your feature branch and you're creating multiple commits, then every single commit will be merged to the branch where you're merging to. If you, for example, use squad commit right here, it will first, well, summarize and then make the commit, just to make sure that your, for example, in this case, your master branch will be kept clean from a commit point of view. So if we do so for now, squash commit, for example, right here, by the way, and I almost forgot it, but right here, by using pull requests, you can also avoid to have branch maintenance. So you can, by default, this will be marked delete feature branch after merging. So in this case, we don't need to execute branch maintenance in the end, since the branch will be removed as soon as I complete the merge. So if I do so, complete merge, it will start to merge. So in the overview, you can follow along. This might take just a moment. And there we go. So the pull request is completed and has been successfully merged. There we go. If we now want to quickly validate if the branch really was removed, well, we just navigate to branches on the left-hand side, go to all, and as you can see, we only have our development and master branch in place. There we go. This actually is everything I wanted to show you during the demo. Let's head back to the presentation. Here. So moving forward, today, I have been showing you how to set up a database project in 2 different ways. One, just import a full database. The other one, well, taking a way around to get the same result for specific objects. Then I've been showing you, of course, with a very easy example, how to use feature branching. Then, the last part in this demo, of course, was how to use pull requests. To be fair, I'm a big fan of pull requests, since as soon as I started to use it, my development quality really rose a lot. Then, really moving forward, what else can you do to improve? Well, I'm thinking about two different things at this point in time. First of all, test automation, or just general SQL unit testing, for example. If you want to take a look at it, it might be worth to take a look at T-SQL-T, which is a SQL unit testing framework. And of course, where you can gain time as well is during your deployment. So it might be worth to take a look at deployment automation as well. To give you a quick example, I'm currently automatically deploying to 6 different environments. Well, 3 production and 3 development environments, and now and then I have my acceptance environment as well. But if I need to deploy to every single environment separately, it would still take me half an hour or an hour, since I need to sign into the machine, I need to deploy manually, which is just way too much work. And right now for development, I can just let everything go with every commit. It's just deploying automatically to my development environment. And for my production environments, I just need to go to Azure DevOps, go to the right release pipeline and just start or create the release, which is gaining me time as well. I can do other things in the meanwhile. Then, benefits and challenges. So I really hope I was able to show you how easy it was to set up a database project, how you can, or how you will have a clear changelog for every single object in your database project, that you can identify what has been changed, when, by whom, and why. Then I really hope I was able to show you how efficiency of deploying, particularly in my case, of course, was improved, because in the past I was losing hours, days for preparation and deployment, and right now I really can do it in a matter of a couple of minutes. Then, when working with pull requests, as already mentioned a couple of times, it really, as soon as I started to use pull requests, it really was improving the development quality, since a lot of issues were found before they were moving to production. Then, the biggest challenge of them all, and it is something I mentioned already, changing habits. So you really need to change your way of working, but you will benefit from it in the end. So people will be your biggest challenge. It really is as easy as that. That being said, my name is Olivier Van Steenlandt. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. In case you have any feedback about this session, please feel free to reach out. I have a feedback form on my personal website, oliviervs.be/feedback. Everything is highly appreciated. Good feedback, bad feedback, doesn't matter. It just helps me to grow. Then my slides should be available on GitHub as well. Normally after session or in coming days, the URL to my session deck will be shared as well. In case you have any questions tomorrow, next week, next month, just reach out over the mentioned channels. And then, of course, if there are any questions left, please shoot. Thank you very much.